The one thing that's tied to every game of Overwatch is time. It's tied to respawns, to capturing objectives, number of team fights, tempo with abilities, etc. The game having been changed from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, it's helpful to know what has changed, what has stayed the same, and how to use this knowledge to better influence decisions in-game. For every death, you have to wait 10 seconds before you can play the game again. This is a standard. However, it's possible to have a 12-second long respawn when a team pushes a robot to or beyond the checkpoint during a game of push. But these respawn times don't tell the full story. The other half of the punishment is a walk back to the fight. If you want to know the total time it takes from death to back into action, it's about 20 seconds. It's something that isn't exact because heroes with mobility can come back much faster, and for game modes with moving objectives, it could be 10 seconds when your team is getting spawn held, or 30 seconds because of map design. The map design and the disparity of spawn locations for attackers and defenders can be so great that there used to be a mechanic called Attacker Advantage Timer. This is covered on Karku's Overtime and Respawn Mechanics video, which I felt I needed to include for the sake of updating old content. In summary, the feature made it so that if the attacking team had more players on the objective than the defending team, the respawn times for the defenders would slowly become longer and longer, with it being capped at 15 seconds for a respawn. But after experimenting in a custom lobby, spawns still stay a flat 10 seconds. There is one remaining feature that affects spawn time, and that is overtime. When overtime is triggered, respawns are additionally 3 seconds longer for both sides, and potentially up to 15 seconds on push map. Note that the respawn increase doesn't apply if you've perished before overtime is triggered. But what causes overtime? Overtime is triggered when the attacking team has touched the objective within the last 3 seconds of the score clock. To clarify who the attackers are, for escort and hybrid type game modes, the attacking and defending teams are predetermined. However, for control or flashpoint, attackers are defined by the team who doesn't have control of the objective. And for push, it's the team that doesn't have the lead. So, if the attackers touch before the last 3 seconds, or simply just run out of time and don't touch, there is no overtime and the round simply ends. But if the attackers touch the objective within those 3 seconds, the clock overlay is replaced with the overtime wick. It will never burn so long as a member from the attacking side is touching the objective. This wick has 3 tiers to its burn rate. For the first tier, the wick lasts 5 seconds when overtime initially triggers. When OT has been lasting more than 20 seconds, the wick burns for 3 seconds. And after 30 seconds of OT, the wick burns in just 1.5 seconds. Quite literally, the attackers have to be glued to the payload or risk the round ending.
Misfits, they're actually getting pushed back. Oh no! Oh my goodness!
But you can really take advantage of this overtime wick. Once you trigger OT, all you have to do is touch the objective once every 5 seconds. This can be done exceptionally well with some communication between 2 mobile heroes like Sombra and Doom. And if you can do this 3 to 4 times, you are buying time for the rest of your teammates to respawn and get back into the fight. This strategy is known as stalling. Next, we'll talk about extra rounds and time banks. On game modes with defined attackers and defenders, like Escort and Hybrid, it's possible for the attackers to gain more time by completing objectives. The time you get for completing objectives doesn't really matter too much. It only really matters after completing a map, because whatever time remains on the score clock is saved in that team's time bank. Extra rounds only occur if both teams complete the map by capturing or reaching all objectives. Just as a side note, if both teams have the same amount of progress but run out of time, the game simply ends in a draw. With that being the only condition where the teams have to complete the map, it is possible to play more and more rounds, but that's assuming both teams don't know how to defend. Because once the extra rounds start, there is no possible way to gain more time. So there are a lot of scenarios that change how much time you get leading into it. The easiest scenario is when both teams have no time in the time bank. At this point, the game gives a minimum floor time of 1 minute, which allows the attackers to set up their attack. If one team doesn't meet the minimum floor time, both teams add time equally, just like in the first scenario. In this case, the blue team finished with roughly 1 minute and 10 seconds on the clock. It's tough to tell because we don't see the tenths of a second. When we go on this screen, we'll notice that we have a starting time of 4 minutes. That's why I'm referencing back to the time we actually finished with, because it's hard to understand where the time is going. When we look at the red team, which finished with 1.5 seconds, they have to meet the minimum floor of 1 minute, and the blue team also gets 1 minute as a reward. If both teams meet the minimum floor time, nothing happens, and both teams stay as they are. There are some small game design things that happen, like where the game does the 2-minute check. If both teams exceed 2 minutes in the time bank, then the game subtracts time equally until the team with less time reaches 2 minutes flat. Another scenario is when both teams have a time bank greater than 0. If your team has time, you are guaranteed to have another chance to attack. But not everything is fair. Even if your team captures all 3 objectives on a hybrid map, you are not guaranteed a second shot, because anytime one team finishes with 0 time and the other has at least 1 minute, the team with 0 time in their time bank doesn't get a chance to attack and is supposed to defend against the enemy team from getting 1 tick. It's always bittersweet because even if you win, the best result is a draw. Okay, so we've reached the fun fact portion of the video. For this segment, I'll go through less noticeable details about time for your trivia test tomorrow. For the objectives, you should know that the payload and capture points can move or captured faster with more people on it. This table shows the capture rate increases for each objective type. By overlapping these clips, you can get a better idea for how significant these speed increases are. The payload one may not do enough justice, so here's the visual for where the payloads finish in this race. The distance from checkpoint to checkpoint ranges from 70 to 100 meters. As you can see, with 3 people on the payload, it completes the entire map when the payload with 1 person pushing is just starting the last checkpoint. The attacking side wants to have minimal team fights so that they can build up their time bank, and having 3 people on the objective is one way to do that. For Flashpoint, each percent point equates to 0.7 seconds in real time. In total, it will take a minimum of 1 minute and 10 seconds from 0% to 100%. To trigger overtime at the earliest point, it would be at 94.7%, or 95 just to keep it easy. For Control, much like Flashpoint, each percent equates to 1.2 seconds, and in total, it will take a minimum of 2 minutes to go from 0% to 100%. Triggering overtime at the earliest point would be at 96.5%, or 97 to keep it easy. For a push, the first fact is that each meter the bot pushes is just under a second. So in those times where you're not really sure if you have to contest or not, do the quick math in your head and figure out how much time you have before you need to contest. Sometimes the sound cue can make it seem like you have less time than what you really have. The second fact is when the robot reaches the checkpoint. It enters what is known as the butt scratch animation, which lasts 12 seconds. The bot can't be pushed during this animation, and really, that's a lot of time for you to either regroup with your team because their spawn is closer to you, so you could get trampled, or it's time for your team to push forward because there ain't nothing better for you to do. That's all the time facts I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until then, I'll see you when I see you. Peace.